Hello and welcome to another Times Radio recap with me, Philip Ingram. I'm a presenter of Times Radio Frontline and a former senior British military intelligence officer and NATO planner, but I also commentate on all matters defence, cyber, terrorism, and anything else that people want me to do. But today we've got some fantastic videos for you. And of course, we've delayed last week's recap until after the meeting that happened between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in Alaska. Let's have a look at the final press conference of that here now.
So there's no deal until there's a deal. Again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. But we had an extremely productive meeting, and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant, but we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there.
President of the Russian Federation.
As you well know and understand, one of the central topics was the situation around Ukraine. We see the desire of the US administration and President Trump personally to facilitate the resolution of the Ukrainian conflict. Their desire to delve into the essence and understand its origins. I have said more than once that for Russia, the events in Ukraine are associated with fundamental threats to our national security. Moreover, we have always considered and consider the Ukrainian people, and I've said this multiple times, to be fraternal. As strange as it may sound in today's conditions, we have the same roots, and everything that is happening for us is a tragedy and great pain. Therefore, our country is sincerely interested in putting an end to this. I would like to thank Mr. Trump for our joint work, for the friendly and trusting tone of the conversation. The main thing is that both sides were committed to the result. We see that the US president has a clear idea of what he wants to achieve, sincerely cares about the prosperity of his country, and, at the same time, shows understanding of Russia's national interests. I hope that today's agreements will become a reference point, not only for solving the Ukrainian problem, but will also mark the beginning of the restoration of business-like, pragmatic relations between Russia and the US.
Рассчитывает, что сегодняшние договоренности станут опорной точкой не только для решения украинской проблемы, но и положат начало восстановлению деловых, прагматичных отношений между Россией и США. Как известно, российско-американские встречи...
As is known, Russian-American summits have not been held for more than 4 years. This is a long time. The past period was very difficult for bilateral relations, and, let's be honest, they have slid to the lowest point since the Cold War. And this is not good for our countries, or the world, as a whole. Obviously, sooner or later, it was necessary to correct the situation, to move from confrontation to dialogue. And in this regard, a personal meeting of the heads of the two states was really overdue. Of course, with the condition of serious, painstaking preparation, and this work was generally done. We've established very good direct contacts with US President Trump. We've repeatedly and openly spoken on the phone. As is known, the US President's Special Representative Steve Witkoff has visited us in Russia several times, and our assistants and heads of foreign policy departments have been in regular contact.
So in that, if you compare the body language that Donald Trump has compared to the body language that he had whenever he greeted Vladimir Putin off the plane, we see a very different Donald Trump. It's clear in this press conference that Vladimir Putin had got the upper hand during the negotiations, and Donald Trump was trying to process it and was not being as open with Putin as he had been when he greeted him with a very firm handshake and a pat on the arm, and walking him past F-22 Raptors on the ground and an overflight of the B-2 bombers and F-22s, trying to set the conditions for the negotiations. Negotiations behind closed doors, but instead of it being one-on-one, it was with two teams. Putin's team, highly experienced. They know how to play world leaders and have been for quite some time. Donald Trump's team, very inexperienced, but think that they can do the deal. The readout is starting to happen as we're recording this. President Zelensky is on his way to the White House to sit down with European leaders and talk to Donald Trump. What comes out from that will be fascinating and will set the conditions, if not for the end of the conflict, certainly for what's going to happen over the next few weeks. So the next clip that we've got is just before Zelensky goes off to the White House and he's meeting with the US Special Envoy to Ukraine, General Keith Kellogg.
How are you, sir? Okay. Thank you so much. Hi, good to see you. Great. How are you?
Mr. President, thank you very much for your time. I know your time is busy.
A little bit.
What I wanted to do just briefly was to, I've got a meeting with the President, the Vice President, and the National Security Advisor, Secretary of State this morning.
Thank you so much. So first of all, we are thankful to the President for this invitation and the format of what we will have. It's important signals about security guarantees, and that's why it's important that we are together with the United States and Europe, and the President accepted the common meeting also after our bilateral common meeting with Europeans. And so I'm so grateful that such big countries as UK, Finland, and President von der Leyen, the Secretary Rutte, that they will come, and I think this will be important meeting, and we will speak about the architecture. I think so. We will have time to speak about architecture of security guarantees. And this is what really I think the most important.
Good.
Yes. I hope so. We will speak together. We will begin, of course, bilaterally, but I think mostly we can speak about it when we will be together, sitting together, and then I think this.
Now, General Kellogg has been generally on Ukraine's side for most of the time. So I think President Zelensky will be picking up from him some of the final readouts as to how he thinks things may go in the White House, and setting some of his red lines to General Kellogg and re-emphasizing those so that General Kellogg can brief Donald Trump and the White House team before they actually sit down. Again, it could be an interesting meeting. Let's hope it's not an ambush like there was last time in the Oval Office. So the two interviews that I want to point you at this week are one from Michael Bocherevskiv, who is talking about the Alaska meeting.
I knew, I think, within the few seconds of that media event, let's call it at the end, that there wasn't much movement, especially when Mr. Putin started talking about bilateral relationships and then went on to the issue of Ukraine. But when he did get to Ukraine, he did say all root causes of the conflict must be eliminated. So, of course, as you and I well know by now, that is code for, Ukraine is a illegitimate nation. Zelensky is illegitimate. Russian speakers have to be protected. Ukraine has to demilitarize, all those long list of things that need to be done. And then the other thing, which was extremely bizarre, who is the last world leader to reportedly whisper into Mr. Trump's ear before landing in Alaska? Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus, the dictator for life, who's imprisoned thousands of opponents, and who, not that we need to remind anybody, but, before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, he hosted Russian troops to invade from the north, and he continues to host them. He apparently is going to be hosting some of Russia's nuclear arsenal. It would be really, really interesting to see what the two really discussed, other than the release of prisoners. So finally, for Ukraine, I guess the good news, if any, is no solid deal appears to have been made. They didn't really talk about a temporary ceasefire, which of course could be bad in the short term, but there is still a chance that Ukraine and Europe could influence the course of events over the next weeks.
And you're in Italy at the moment, I understand, Michael, but usually you'd be based in Ukraine. What's the reaction been from your fellow countrymen, other Ukrainians, to the visuals of this meeting?
Well, it didn't take long for them to react. I was carefully monitoring Ukrainian language Telegram channels and Ukrainian social media. And not only in Ukraine, but among the millions of members of the diaspora, total disgust, nauseating reactions to that photo of Mr. Trump applauding Mr. Putin as he approached him, but also the two riding together in the beast. Not only is that a break of protocol, that rarely happens. The fly past, all of those things put together was something that people thought is rewarding Mr. Putin, rewarding a wanted war criminal for his actions in Ukraine. One of the Democratic senators from Connecticut said today, all this does, this kind of imagery and photo ops, is send a signal to other autocrats around the world that they can do what they want basically, and they can still get rewarded for it. So absolutely mind-boggling. Now let's put it on the table here. Mr. Trump is big on optics. He likes to be seen as a tough guy. He left this meeting as the much weaker guy.
And aside from that hero, sort of almost hero's welcome, Putin doesn't seem to really have achieved much, though, does he? I mean, it's worth remembering there were fears going into this meeting. Trump was talking about land swaps. There was an idea that Europe simply wasn't going to get any say on what the outcome of any agreement might be. Is there some reason for a sense of relief in Europe, at least, out of this meeting?
Well, I thought so, but then I was just on a Turkish broadcaster, and they told me that Mr. Trump has brought up the issue of land swaps again. And this, I tell you, raises a lot of ears in Ukraine, because they know exactly what that means. That means that Mr. Putin would presumably be allowed to retain what he has, but also take over the remainder of Zaporizhia and Kherson Oblast. That is a no-go for the Ukrainians, and it is very, very worrisome what could happen in the next little while, because some people might say, well, it doesn't matter what Mr. Trump or the U.S. thinks. Well, it does matter for the time being, because the United States does provide so much to Ukraine to defend itself, including those Patriot missile systems, the intelligence sharing, and even though he's not in Mr. Trump's good books, Mr. Musk does provide the Ukrainian military with that very, very crucial Starlink communication system.
And one small climb down we saw from Putin was this admission that Ukraine would need some sort of security support or security guarantees after any ceasefire or end to this conflict. I mean, that's presumably valued by Ukraine as much as Russia's previous guarantees of security are. But is that language encouraging out of this meeting in any way?
I'm not so sure. I think what was more worrisome to the Ukrainians when Mr. Trump said, now it's up to Mr. Zelensky to get the deal done. So why should the U.S. continue to be involved? Let another interlocutor that's trusted by all sides, like Turkey, take that position over. And I'm sure many Ukrainians don't believe a word that comes out of Mr. Putin's mouth. He has lied repeatedly from the time, from way before the time they shot down MH17 to even temporary agreements regarding red lines or temporary ceasefires during the current war. So Ukrainians have become very smart over the centuries when it comes to Russian intentions. But for sure, they do realize that, they're not going to make the same mistake again as they did with the Budapest Memorandum when they gave up their nuclear arsenal in return for international protection. They are not going to sign on a dotted line unless there are very, very solid security guarantees. And that needs to be put to the Russians that if any agreement is made, if you violate any of them, the consequences will be very immediate and very, very painful.
Michael gets into your perfect analysis of a lot of the factors around the meeting and how, from Putin's perspective, he's cock a hoop. He's won. He's back in the world stage. He's got Donald Trump, the leader of the free world, coming to greet him at the steps of his own aircraft. There's a red carpet out. The fly past by the B-2 bomber and the F-22 Raptors doesn't faze Putin. And the firm handshake that Donald Trump gives him makes Putin feel as if he is firmly back on the world stage. But none of the optics that happened there fazed Putin. And when we get to the final press conference and they come out, Donald Trump's demeanor has changed slightly. Putin's hasn't, or if anything, it's become more emboldened. And Michael explains that very carefully indeed. So, I strongly recommend you don't just watch the clip that we have here, but please go back and watch the whole interview. A fascinating interview. The next interview that I want to highlight this week is from Yuri Felshtinsky.
Prior to this meeting, Putin called all his major partners like China, Belarus, Kazakhstan, etc., and informed them about his meeting with Trump, which would take place. We also know that a conversation took place between Trump and Lukashenko. This is slightly suspicious because in September, the Russian government is planning to conduct so-called military exercises, joint military exercises in Belarus with Belarusian army. Now, we know that these exercises in 22 ended with invasion of Ukraine. So there is a possibility that if these exercises will, quote unquote, will take place, if Russia will start to concentrate troops in Belarus again, this is not about exercises. This is about invasion. We could speculate whether this invasion would be directed against Kiev, capital of Ukraine, because it's very difficult for Putin to win this war, right, to take control of the situation in his war with Ukraine without taking Kiev. There is no way he could win this war without taking Kiev. Or we could speculate that this might be preparation for the invasion of Eastern Europe. And looking at the map, we know that possible target is Lithuania, maybe Lithuania and Estonia, but I would say Lithuania. Now, Trump kind of mentioned that NATO was not participating in this dialogue, in this meeting with Putin, and that he will inform NATO about the results of the meeting. And so this is, unfortunately, this makes me very, very much suspicious of the situation. And I'm afraid that the result of this negotiations, which again went so secretly that so far we do not have any information about what was discussed, that we will find out probably in September what was actually happening and what was actually discussed. The fact that Trump again says that it's now Zelensky's turn to get to sign a deal, right? Again, this brings us to the position where we were when Zelensky went once for the conversation with Trump and Vice President Pence at the Oval Office, right? And we know how it's ended. Zelensky is reportedly coming on Monday, probably to see Trump, but I could tell you right now that Zelensky would never agree to surrender, and Ukraine will never agree to capitulate. This is not happening. This is not happening. And that's precisely what Trump, month after month, is forcing Ukraine to do. It's not going to work. The war will continue, unfortunately. And again, like it was before, like it was starting 21st of January of this year. It's up to Europe and Ukraine to hold the line, because as soon as Russians are done with Ukraine, and I sincerely hope that this will never happen, don't misunderstand me, they will invade Europe, unless they will open the second front now, with hope and understanding that in order to win in Ukraine, they have to invade Europe first.
How is this meeting going to have been read in Moscow, in Russia? I mean, is Putin returning here as a sort of returning hero? Is everyone in Russia going to be happy with what happened at that meeting?
Well, first of all, this again depends on what they discussed and what the agreement is. And if, for example, and I'm speculating, of course, we do not have any information about this, but if, for example, Putin informed Trump that he would invade Europe in September and wants to be sure that Trump would block any NATO actions against Russia. And if Trump agreed to this, this would be a great victory for Trump, for Putin. But this is a speculation, of course, so we won't discuss it. But what is important that Putin went out of isolation, and he was a person with whom no decent political leader would meet and shake a hand and would smile. And he was, limited to people like Viktor Orban to do this. And now, of course, he has Trump, and they kind of pretended that there is a old friendship which is now was being, again reborn. And by the way, Russia was showing a very primitive, of course, propagandistic film about Russian-American friendship. So yes, this part is important. And then it's with Trump, it's always about money. It's always about money. So again, we do not really know what they discussed or what the deals are. But as Trump mentions, there were many small deals on which they agreed, and a couple big ones where they didn't. So taking into account that the economic part of the Russian delegation was a major one in terms of amount of people, probably there were a lot of deals. But, again, with Trump, it's always for money, but it's not going to work. The problem with Trump is that it's not going to work. It's not going to work with Putin. It's not going to work with Ukraine. It's not going to work with Europe. It's not going to work. Canada will not become 51st state of the United States. Greenland would never become part of the United States, etc., etc., etc. It's not going to work. The world is not business. I mean, business is business, but world is the world. So we will see. But I'm of course, I always was very skeptical about promises which Trump was given, about beliefs of many people who sincerely hope that Trump wants to end this war. Trump doesn't want to end this war. Trump wants this war to continue unless Ukraine agrees to surrender to Putin, because this is the major objective for Trump, to force Ukraine to surrender. So Putin would take Ukraine first, would move to Moldova, and would move against Europe, and America will become great again, as it was during and after First World War and Second World War. This is political goal which Trump has. This is his vision, and again, I sincerely hope that this is not happening.
Now, Yuri's got a very interesting take on what he thinks Putin's next moves would be if there are any concessions given, and an interesting take on any peace guarantees or security guarantees that may be given to Ukraine. Yuri is very firm in saying that if Putin is given a chance to breathe again, having taken over some Ukrainian territory and managed to get his self sorted out politically and militarily, that he will come back for another bite of the cherry. And on this, I agree. But he says that another bite of the cherry will be against a European nation or European NATO nation, and it particularly points to the Baltics. This is where I disagree with him slightly. I think Vladimir Putin has got too many other targets which aren't NATO members and would run the risk of an Article 5 Article 5 of NATO's constitution being implemented. He would go elsewhere. If anything, he'd want to go and take another chunk of Ukraine. He would want to consolidate more in the east. He would want to expand across the southern part through Odessa so he can link up with Transnistria, that breakaway province of Moldova. But we agree on the same thing, that Putin will come back for more if he is not defeated. So I strongly recommend you go and watch not just the clip from Yuri, but go and watch his whole interview. The interviews this week have been fascinating. And of course, the week that we've got ahead of us is going to be set up by whatever happens in the White House later on today after we're recording this. So that's the recap for last week and the beginning of this week. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Please, if you want to get exclusive access to content with Times Radio Frontline, sign up for membership, and it allows you to post your question and answers. And of course, you can get us on your favorite podcast channel as well by just searching for Times Radio Frontline. Thank you. Goodbye.